Miami glitters with sunlight and sin, a city where paradise smiles by day, and darkness kills without warning by night. A naked man's rampage scorches the causeway. A woman bludgeoned outside a ballet school. A spring breaker dies alone in her hotel bed. And a sneaker sale ends in gunfire and blood. Now, decades behind bars bring closure to none, the killers confined, the victims gone, and Miami still shimmering above its unburied ghosts. And this is Inside Miami and Miami Beach's most notorious black killers, shocking murders, and true crime cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1, Rudy Eugene. Under the Miami sun, a man walked naked across a highway bridge. What followed would become one of America's strangest crimes. On the 26th of May 2012, 31-year-old Rudy Eugene crossed the MacArthur Causeway connecting Miami and Miami Beach. Beneath the bridge, 65-year-old Ronald Papo, a homeless man who had spent decades living on the streets, was resting. Within moments, the two strangers would collide in an assault so violent and senseless that investigators struggled for years to explain it. Earlier that morning, Eugene left his girlfriend's home in Miami Gardens acting strangely, rummaging through clothes, speaking to himself, and leaving around 2 a.m. without direction. His car later broke down near South Beach, forcing him to walk under the punishing heat back toward the mainland. Surveillance cameras later captured him discarding his clothes piece by piece until he was completely naked. Witnesses saw him wandering erratically across the bridge, muttering and gesturing to himself. Around 1:55 p.m., Eugene encountered Papo lying near the Miami Herald building. Without warning, he launched a brutal attack, punching the older man, dragging him along the sidewalk, and biting at his face. The assault lasted for nearly 18 minutes as traffic moved nearby. Passers-by hesitated, unsure whether it was a fight or a drug-induced outburst. One cyclist, Larry Vega, eventually stopped and flagged down a Miami police officer. Officer Jose Ramirez arrived minutes later. He found Eugene crouched over Papo, covered in blood. The officer shouted for him to stop. Eugene turned, growled, and resumed biting. Ramirez fired once. Eugene did not react. Several more rounds ended the assault. The scene, captured on security cameras, revealed an attack so relentless it defied logic. Paramedics rushed Papo to Jackson Memorial Hospital. He had lost his nose, one eye, and most of the skin above his beard line, roughly 80% of his face. Surgeons performed months of reconstructive procedures. Against all odds, Papo survived. Investigators searched for an explanation. Police first suspected bath salts, a synthetic stimulant known to trigger psychotic aggression. Yet, toxicology tests from both the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner and an independent laboratory revealed only marijuana, no bath salts, PCP, LSD, cocaine, or other synthetic substances. The autopsy confirmed that no human flesh was found in Eugene's stomach, contradicting early media reports of cannibalism. Only undigested pills of unknown composition were discovered. Eugene's history showed minor arrests for assault and marijuana possession but no diagnosed mental illness. Friends described him as calm, religious, and far from violent. Authorities concluded that his actions could not be linked to any known drug or psychological condition. Papo remains blind and disfigured but alive in a long-term care facility, supported by donations and Medicaid. The community expressed disbelief and sorrow, recognizing the tragedy as a moment that defied explanation. 3 lessons endure: human behavior can collapse without warning, speculation without evidence misleads justice, and compassion toward victims defines moral strength beyond understanding. The Miami Causeway attack remains a haunting symbol of violence without motive, forever unsolved beneath the glare of the Florida sun. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2, Gregory Gibert. Beneath the glow of Miami Beach streetlights, a quiet figure slept on the steps of a ballet school, unaware that death was approaching in silence. In the early hours of the 23rd of April 2024, 37-year-old Andrea Doria dos Passos, a transgender woman experiencing homelessness, lay resting outside the Miami City Ballet building near Liberty Avenue. Just before dawn, a man appeared on surveillance cameras, 53-year-old Gregory Fitzgerald Gibert. Within minutes, his actions would turn a peaceful night into one of the most brutal killings in recent Miami history. Around midnight, Dos Passos was seen settling into her usual sleeping spot near the entrance. Later, footage captured Gibert wandering into the area, scanning the surroundings, and picking up a metal pipe. He approached the sleeping victim and began striking her repeatedly in the head and face. The camera recorded the repeated blows and his movements afterward as he stood over her body before walking away to dispose of the weapon in a nearby trash bin. At 6:45 a.m., a security guard discovered what appeared to be a person sleeping on the steps. On closer look, he saw blood and called 911. Responding officers found Dos Passos dead, her injuries catastrophic. The medical examiner later documented massive head trauma, facial wounds, a puncture to the chest, and 2 wooden sticks forced into her nostrils, one exiting above the eye. Detectives canvassed the area, recovered the blood-stained pipe, and quickly traced the suspect using security footage. A citywide alert went out. Within hours, Gibert was found still wearing the distinctive red shorts and basketball shoes captured on video. He was arrested without incident and refused to cooperate with police. Records showed Gibert's extensive criminal history, over 24 prior cases, including assault and armed robbery. He had been released from prison only 6 days earlier on felony probation. Miami Beach detectives found no immediate evidence suggesting the killing was motivated by gender bias, but acknowledged public concern over potential hate crime implications. The brutality, they said, was beyond comprehension. During his court appearance, Judge Mindy Glazer upgraded the charge from second-degree to first-degree murder, citing actions that demonstrated intent and desecration of the body. Gibert was ordered held without bond. There would be no plea, no defense statement, just a motionless defendant facing the weight of overwhelming evidence. The murder left the community in shock. Andrea's family expressed grief and frustration over her vulnerability on the streets, while city officials condemned the failure to prevent another violent repeat offender from striking again. Local LGBTQ+ organizations mourned her loss and renewed calls for better safety measures for transgender individuals and the homeless population. 3 lessons remain clear. Unchecked violence against the vulnerable exposes deep flaws in the system, early intervention could prevent recurring crimes, and dignity must never depend on housing or gender. The killing of Andrea Dos Passos stands as a haunting reminder of how cruelty can thrive in silence, and how justice must rise to confront it. Number 3. Nicholas Robinson. Under the glowing lights of Miami Beach, a birthday celebration turned into a deadly collision that shattered 2 families and ignited a call for justice. Shortly after midnight on the 21st of February 2024, 24-year-old Nicholas Devin Robinson sped westbound across the MacArthur Causeway in a silver Polestar Model 2. Returning from celebrating his birthday in South Beach, Robinson was seen by officers driving nearly 100 miles per hour in a 40 zone. Ahead of him, 19-year-old Florida International University student Gabriela Alejandra Rios Flores sat inside her disabled Jeep Wrangler on the shoulder, waiting for help after a K-9 officer had just moved her vehicle from the active lanes. Seconds later, the night turned catastrophic. Investigators said Robinson's vehicle struck a concrete divider before slamming into the rear of Rios Flores' Jeep with massive force. The impact flipped the Jeep and threw Rios Flores onto the roadway. Her friend Daniel Kahn, standing nearby, suffered a broken arm. Robinson's vehicle came to rest mangled and smoking. A Miami Beach police sergeant stopped him at gunpoint moments later. Disoriented and unaware of the crash, Robinson appeared confused as officers detained him. He later vomited in the back seat of the patrol car, showing clear signs of intoxication. Officers noted slurred speech, glassy eyes, and the odor of alcohol. Robinson refused a voluntary blood draw, forcing detectives to secure a search warrant for a mandatory sample. The toxicology report confirmed impairment levels consistent with DUI manslaughter. Surveillance footage, crash reconstruction, and witness statements helped investigators piece together the sequence of events, confirming excessive speed and alcohol as the primary factors. 4 days after the crash, Rios Flores succumbed to her injuries. The case shifted from reckless driving to vehicular homicide. By March 8, prosecutors filed an upgraded charge of DUI manslaughter. During his first court appearance, Judge Mindy Glazer called Robinson a danger to the community, citing the extreme speed and loss of life. His bond was set at $200,000, and he was ordered to remain on level 1 house arrest if released. Robinson pleaded not guilty, and his attorney requested a jury trial, indicating plans to challenge the legality of the blood draw and the chain of evidence. Robinson remains at the Metroist Detention Center awaiting trial. Prosecutors say the evidence against him is overwhelming, describing the crash as a textbook example of reckless drunk driving leading to fatal consequences. Community response centered on grief for Rios Flores, a young international student from El Salvador remembered for her kindness and ambition. FIU students held small vigils on campus, and her family received condolences from both Florida and El Salvador. The crash closed the MacArthur Causeway for nearly 9 hours, underscoring how one decision destroyed multiple lives. 3 lessons remain. Alcohol behind the wheel erases futures instantly, recklessness on the road turns celebrations into tragedies, and accountability must follow every preventable death. The MacArthur Causeway crash stands as a chilling warning about choice, consequence, and the irreversible cost of driving under the influence. Number 4. Labrant Dennis. In April 1996, inside a University of Miami apartment, a night of jealousy turned into one of the most violent double murders in Florida history. Labrant D. Dennis, once a boyfriend to 22-year-old Timwanika Lumpkins, had grown increasingly possessive and enraged after their breakup. On April 12, Lumpkins attended a party at Club Salvation with her close friend, Miami Hurricanes linebacker Marlon Barnes. The two left around 2 a.m. only to find the tires on a borrowed Ford Explorer slashed. After calling a tow truck, they returned to Barnes' on-campus apartment, unaware Dennis had been following them. Investigators later determined Dennis tracked the pair that night, stalking them from his girlfriend's gray Nissan. A nearby gas station attendant recalled seeing him parked in view of the disabled SUV, watching as the tow truck carried it away. He followed it back to campus, armed with a shotgun he had borrowed days earlier from a co-worker named Joseph Stewart. Once inside the apartment, Dennis attacked without warning. He beat Barnes and Lumpkins with such ferocity that the shotgun shattered during the assault. Blood sprayed across walls and ceilings, fragments of the weapon embedding in both victims and the surrounding plaster. Barnes' face was destroyed beyond recognition. Lumpkins was dragged from under a bed, her fingernails broken as she tried to resist. The next morning, Barnes' roommate, Earl Little, returned to find him slumped against the door, barely alive and gasping for air. Barnes died at the scene. Lumpkins succumbed on the way to the hospital. Both were 22. Detectives quickly focused on Dennis, who denied involvement but admitted he and Lumpkins had argued about her friendship with Barnes. The investigation intensified when Stewart informed police that Dennis had borrowed his mother's shotgun just days before the killings and returned it damaged, missing its trigger guard. Forensic testing later matched those fragments to the weapon found discarded near Dennis's home. Combined with witness accounts and prior threats Dennis made toward Lumpkins, the evidence was overwhelming. He was arrested on the 30th of April 1996. Dennis was indicted for 2 counts of first-degree murder, armed burglary, and criminal mischief. During his 1998 trial, prosecutors presented the physical evidence and chilling forensic testimony describing the brutality. The jury convicted him on all charges. 11 of 12 jurors voted for death, and in February 1999, Judge Manuel Crespo sentenced him to die, calling the crime extraordinarily cruel. After decades on Florida's death row, a 2016 Supreme Court ruling required new sentencing reviews due to jury vote requirements. In 2020, his death sentence was overturned. A resentencing trial in 2025 replaced the death penalty with life in prison. The families of Barnes and Lumpkins left court in tears, saying the pain never ended. 3 lessons emerge. Jealousy mixed with violence destroys generations, evidence leaves no space for denial, and justice may bend but never disappears. The murder of Marlon Barnes and Timwanika Lumpkins remains one of the most haunting crimes in college football history. Number 5. Jamell Maurice Demons. In October 2018, inside a quiet Florida suburb, a rising rapper's name became forever tied to one of hip-hop's darkest murder cases. Jamell Maurice Demons, known professionally as YNW Melly, was 19 when investigators say fame, loyalty, and betrayal collided on the streets of Miramar. The victims, Anthony Williams, known as YNW Sackchaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., known as YNW Juvie, were his close friends and fellow members of the YNW Collective. prosecutors alleged that Melly and associate Cortland Henry, also known as YNW Bordlin, killed the two men and then staged the crime scene to look like a drive-by shooting. On the 26th of October 2018, the four men were last seen leaving a Fort Lauderdale recording studio around 3:20 a.m. Hours later, Henry arrived at Memorial Hospital Miramar, claiming his passengers had been shot in a drive-by. Both victims were pronounced dead on arrival, suffering multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso. Investigators began piecing together a case that quickly unraveled the alleged story. Detectives found no evidence of gunfire along the route Henry claimed the shooting occurred. Blood spatter analysis revealed shots were fired from inside the vehicle, not outside. Phone records placed Melly in the back seat where the fatal shots originated, and surveillance footage from earlier in the night confirmed all four men were in the same car. Police concluded that Melly allegedly shot both victims from inside, then stepped out with Henry to fire additional rounds into the vehicle to mimic a drive-by pattern. The investigation widened when ballistics and phone data aligned with forensic modeling. Lead detective Mark Moretti testified that trajectory patterns and blood evidence supported the theory of an inside shooting. Melly surrendered on the 13th of February 2019 after publicly announcing his arrest on Instagram. Henry was arrested days later and charged as an accomplice. Both were indicted for 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. Melly's defense argued there was no motive, calling the evidence circumstantial. However, prosecutors pointed to financial disputes within the group and jealousy over control of the YNW brand. The first trial began in June 2023 in Broward County and lasted several weeks. After days of deliberation, jurors failed to reach a unanimous decision. On the 22nd of July 2023, Judge John J. Murphy III declared a mistrial. Melly remained behind bars without bond, while Henry, initially freed, was later rearrested for witness tampering. A retrial is scheduled for September 2025, though records suggest it could be delayed to 2027. If convicted, Melly faces life imprisonment or the death penalty under Florida's new capital sentencing law, which allows an 8-4 jury vote to impose death. The case remains one of the most closely watched in modern rap history, blending celebrity, violence, and forensic precision. Families of the victims continue to seek closure, while Melly supporters rally online, insisting on his innocence. 3 lessons endure: fame cannot shield truth, forensic evidence can outlast deception, and loyalty can vanish faster than success. The YNW Melly case remains one of America's most chilling intersections of music and murder. Number 6. Evoire Collier, Dorian Taylor. She came to Miami for sunshine, not tragedy. What followed was a spring break story that would horrify even seasoned detectives. In March 2021, 24-year-old Christine Engelhardt arrived alone in Miami Beach from Pennsylvania, ready to enjoy her vacation. Days later, she was found dead in her hotel room at the Albion Hotel. The suspects, Evoire Collier, 21, and Dorian Taylor, 24, college roommates from North Carolina, were later accused of drugging, sexually assaulting, and robbing her before leaving her to die. The sequence began at a South Beach restaurant where Christine met the two men. Investigators allege they gave her a green pill before accompanying her back to the hotel. Collier told detectives he thought it was Percocet. Surveillance footage captured the group entering her room around 1 a.m. on March 18. Detectives later testified that Christine appeared disoriented, barely able to stand, with Taylor holding her by the neck to keep her upright. Authorities believe the men had sex with her multiple times, including while she was unconscious. Video evidence showed them leaving roughly 40 minutes later without calling for help. They took Christine's phone, credit cards, and cash, then used her cards minutes later to buy alcohol at Sobe Liquors and the Sugar Factory. The next morning, hotel staff discovered her lifeless body, partially clothed and unresponsive. The investigation moved quickly. Police arrested Collier and Taylor 3 days later, finding stolen items and 2 identical green pills in their possession. Toxicology tests revealed the pills contained fentanyl. The Miami-Dade medical examiner ruled the cause of death as acute fentanyl and ethanol toxicity, noting she likely suffocated face down due to the combined effects of the drugs and alcohol. Her blood alcohol content was nearly 3 times the legal driving limit. Investigators emphasized that the fentanyl dose was rapidly fatal. Detectives traced evidence linking the suspects to both the drugs and the crime scene. Collier allegedly admitted to providing the pill and having intercourse while Christine was unconscious. The combination of chemical evidence, surveillance footage, and credit card use formed a clear timeline for prosecutors. In August 2021, a Miami-Dade grand jury indicted both men on first-degree murder charges, accusing them of causing Christine's death through unlawful distribution of fentanyl while committing sexual battery and burglary. Taylor faced an additional first-degree murder charge for allegedly selling fentanyl to another tourist, 21-year-old Walter Riley, who died 2 days later. Both suspects entered not guilty pleas. They remain jailed without bond, awaiting trial. The courtroom remained tense as prosecutors described calculated actions and a preventable death. Christine's family grieved privately, while her friends remembered her as kind and full of ambition. Collier's relatives defended him publicly, claiming he was manipulated by his older roommate. 3 lessons stand clear. Predators often hide behind charm, synthetic drugs kill faster than intent, and safety cannot depend on trust among strangers. Christine Englehart's story endures as a devastating reminder of how one pill can end a life. Number 7. Anthony Clinch and Yaairnes Rashad Bryant. Under the flashing lights of Liberty City, the sound of gunfire shattered the night and the lives of 4 young men forever. On the 8th of April 2018, a burst of bullets tore through the Liberty Square apartments in Miami. When the chaos ended, Kimson Green and Ricky Dixon lay dead, while 2 others were wounded. Both victims had attended Miami Northwestern Senior High School, and investigators quickly suggested the shooting was gang-related. Pressure to solve the case mounted immediately, leading police to identify 2 suspects within weeks, 19-year-old Anthony Clinch and 21-year-old Yaairnes Rashad Bryant. On May 5, police announced the arrests. Both men were charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, based largely on a witness identification. Investigators declared themselves 150% sure they had the right suspects. Clinch and Bryant were denied bond and booked into the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center as grieving families and local news outlets broadcast the story of their alleged involvement. But the truth unraveled as quickly as the case was built. Clinch's mother, Sharon Dancy, insisted her son was innocent, saying he had been with her in Hialeah at the time of the shooting. She presented detectives with a store receipt proving their whereabouts. Police reviewed surveillance footage and confirmed that Clinch was shopping with his mother when the shooting occurred, miles away from Liberty Square. The evidence was undeniable. Within hours, investigators verified the alibi and concluded that Clinch and Bryant were wrongly accused. On May 7, the Miami Police Department decided to drop the charges. Yet despite the decision, both men remained in custody for nearly 20 additional hours before being formally released the next afternoon. The charges were officially dropped on May 8, and both walked free after spending 3 nights in jail for crimes they did not commit. The fallout was immediate. Police suspended the search for a 3rd suspect, DeAndre McDuffie, whose warrant had been active. Miami Police Chief Jorge Colina publicly acknowledged the mistake, emphasizing that he would never allow an innocent person to remain behind bars. Still, the families of Clinch and Bryant were devastated by the ordeal. Clinch's family hired an attorney and announced plans to sue the Miami Police Department, arguing that their evidence, not police work, proved his innocence. In the courtroom, charges were dismissed in record time. Both men returned home to emotional embraces, but the damage to their reputations lingered. The murders of Green and Dixon, meanwhile, remain unsolved, with police back to the drawing board in search of answers. The community responded first with outrage over gun violence, then disbelief at the wrongful arrests. Students from Miami Northwestern walked out in protest, demanding justice for both the slain and the falsely accused. City leaders apologized publicly, admitting that the arrests were premature. 3 lessons endure. Truth requires patience before accusation, evidence must lead emotion, and justice delayed can still wound the innocent. The Liberty City shooting remains both a tragedy of violence and a cautionary tale about rushing to judgment. Number 8. Adrian Cosby and George Walton. A late-night sneaker deal in Miami turned deadly, leaving a high school student's dream and future shattered over a $935 exchange. On the 7th of April, 2020, Andrea Camps-Lacayo, a senior at Terra Environmental Research Institute, was shot and killed during a robbery gone wrong. Andrea was selling 3 pairs of Adidas Yeezy sneakers with her boyfriend, Sergio Bourbon. The buyers were 2 19-year-olds, Adrian Cosby and George Walton. The meeting, arranged through Instagram, began as a simple sale and ended in tragedy. That night, Bourbon drove his white Jeep Wrangler to the agreed location in Homestead. When they arrived, Walton directed him to a side street near an abandoned home. Sitting in the passenger seat, Andrea watched as Walton approached and asked to try on the sneakers. Bourbon refused to hand them over until he saw cash. Then, from the shadows, Cosby appeared at the driver's side window with a gun. He fired multiple times into the vehicle before fleeing with Walton. A bullet struck Andrea in the torso, while another grazed Bourbon's arm. Bourbon sped off, desperate to reach help. Andrea was rushed to Jackson South Medical Center, where she died soon after. Detectives quickly traced the suspects through their digital trail. The Instagram account used for communication linked directly to Walton. When police executed a warrant, both men were found hiding in a nearby residence. Walton admitted their plan had been to steal the sneakers after trying them on. Cosby confessed to firing the shots. Evidence from their phones revealed deleted photos and messages the day after the murder. Investigators concluded both had acted together in an armed robbery that resulted in Andrea's death. The murder weapon was never recovered, but prosecutors relied on witness statements, phone data, and confessions. Both men were charged with second-degree murder, and attempted armed robbery. Over the next 4 years, the case unfolded in Miami-Dade Circuit Court. In February 2024, George Walton was convicted of first-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, and attempted robbery with a firearm. Although he didn't fire the weapon, Florida's felony murder rule held him equally responsible for Andrea's death. He received a life sentence. Months later, Adrian Cosby faced trial. Jurors found him guilty of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and attempted robbery. In October 2024, he was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 25 years. During sentencing, Cosby erupted in anger, shouting obscenities before being restrained by officers. The courtroom fell silent as Andrea's parents spoke of her kindness and ambition. Judge Miguel de Lao called the crime senseless. Walton showed no reaction, while Cosby left in shackles. Both remain incarcerated for life. Community grief was immense. Andrea's classmates mourned a leader and friend, while her school remembered her as a bright student accepted to Florida International University's nursing program. 3 lessons endure. Greed turns opportunity into destruction. Digital evidence now defines modern justice, and every decision made with anger can end countless futures. Andrea's story remains a chilling example of how one night, one plan, and one trigger ended a lifetime of promise. And those were just a few of the stories buried beneath Miami's glittering lights, where paradise meets peril, and every headline hides another secret. Which case disturbed you the most? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. We read every one of them. And if you want more deep dives into real American crime, subscribe to Justice Reversed and tap the notification bell so you never miss what's next.